The caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series is sponsored by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage. By FPZERO Simulators, providing professional-grade simulators for your home and our drivers. And by Just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7, with further support from Design and Display Structures and Darren Burke, Performance Driver Coach. It's that time once again. It is caterhamracer.com esports racing for our Caterham racers in mostly real life, but also some of our virtual racers and those who drive Caterhams in real life. They're all getting together once more. But this is the third of 6 races in this kind of Euro Winter Series. It pretty much is what it says on the tin. It is a Winter Series after the sort of truncated and shortened 2020 real-world Caterham Motorsport season. Now it's a bit of a lead into the winter time now, into, of course, the 2021 before we get things back underway next year. Of course, the Euro Series means that we're visiting circuits not just in the UK, but circuits all around the European continent. We've already been to Brands Hatch at the Grand Prix circuit for the UK. Last time out, we were at Zolder in Belgium. Now we're at another former Formula 1 Grand Prix venue because it is Estoril in Portugal. It's located just in the Cascais municipality in the Lisbon district of Portugal, and it has a population of about just over 200,000 people. And there's not might not be that many on track, or at least around the virtual circuit. It should certainly be a fantastic spectacle nonetheless. Scott Woodwiss here to go through all the action. Chris Hutchinson back alongside me as well. And Chris, this is a circuit where in real life it's had its own fair share of Caterham racing. And I alluded to this, I think it was before on the Zolder broadcast, but there's a particular occasion of Caterham racing that I remember in an onboard video, which I urge everyone to go and watch, which is the 2015, I think it's the Estoril Racing Festival. And it was a big multi-class Caterham race, and one driver in particular, John Barnes, started, I think it was 42nd at the back of the grid, and within, must have been 10 laps or so, managed to charge his way into the lead. So it is one of those circuits, particularly with this long straight, where there's plenty of overtaking opportunities, and those who need to go quickly on the circuit certainly will. And it's certainly going to be a great spectacle to watch these guys go back and forth, especially down that run down towards the very tight braking zone of turn 1.
Yeah, it's a track I've not actually been to myself. I haven't got real life racing experience. I have turned some laps in the simulator, and I can say that it's a fun track to drive. It's definitely technical. It's kind of land of the hairpin, really. A lot of hairpins, all sorts. We've got open hairpins, tight hairpins. We even got sort of 2 hairpins strung together in what they're calling a chicane. So it's kind of a unique challenge, and one that some drivers are rising to, and through pre-qualifying and through sort of the testing, some drivers have really struggled to get a nice flow and technique around here. Certainly it's not a high grip surface on the simulator version, so you have to be really patient with your turn in and waiting to get that throttle down, and you have to be a bit more gentle with your application of the throttle.
And in particular with these cars, because the eagle-eyed amongst you who are watching may have noticed, we're not in the Academy cars tonight. We've switched and we've sort of moved up, so to speak, because we did say sort of week by week we would change the cars if we felt we needed to. We've had 2 rounds in the Academy cars. Now it's time to switch it up to go to the fastest Caterhams out there, which is the 420Rs. So it's the first time in the Winter Euro Series for drivers racing these cars. Not the first time any of these guys would have mainly driven these cars, because of course the majority are familiar from the first couple of seasons of caterhamracer.com, the series during the first lockdown, and then the season which followed the real-life Caterham Motorsport calendar for when racing got back underway in July. So looking at the schedule so far, we've still got a few more good rounds to go. Let's take a quick look at what we've got coming up after this round, just quickly in terms of the schedule. So as we say, we've had Brands Hatch, we've had Zolder, Estoril tonight. We then move across back to the more continental Western Europe and up towards Circuit Park Zandvoort, which is just on the coast of Holland. And then we've got Circuit de Barcelona for the last chance saloon race, which is anyone who hasn't managed to pick up an automatic top 3 qualifying spot, and we'll reiterate that in a second in terms of how that works. They get a last chance to go through onto the grid, and then you have the grand final taking place on the virtual representation of the Grand Prix circuit at the Nürburgring in Germany to finish things up. Now, just a reminder for those who are watching for the first time, this is not a regular championship, so there are no points being scored here, etc. There's no champion at the end of it, so to speak, in a conventional sense. How this simply works, it's a bit more of a slightly bit more of a you could call it a knockout / progression style event. It's a bit similar to, if anyone's watched the Formula Ford Festival or the Walter Hayes Trophy, where you have these qualifying rounds, or heats if you like, and the top 3 drivers that haven't already got a qualifying spot fifth place man Richard Gallagher. Got it? Understood? Following? No? Good. Anyway, well, it'll become clearer for some people as we go on and talk about it more. But either way, we've had some pretty decent drivers in the mix, and already some decent drivers going up. And tonight we've got one or two drivers here who I can see are kind of making, if not their first appearance of this Winter Euro Series, but drivers I would certainly expect to be getting through pretty quickly. Now, I think it's obvious to say, Chris, that the man currently at the top of the times in qualifying, probably favourite to get a qualifying spot at least in the top three if things don't happen and shenanigans don't take place that prevent him from doing so.
Yeah, Murphy's back for Season 3 for the first time, so he hasn't been able to take part in the first couple of events, but he is here, and you can see by his qualifying time that he's set so far that is anything into the 55s is a great lap, so nearly breaking into the 54s is truly something special. He's a 10th clear of everyone else. Jensen Hassler, again, a good performance there in second place, but yep, Murphy's back to try and get that qualifying place, and we've also got the return of Mark Bennett, who we've been watching a bit so far on qualifying. He's one of the only drivers that's actually driven here in real life in his own 420R, so he's got some circuit knowledge, and he's come straight back in and is really performing well, currently in 5th, but has been even higher in pre-qualifying. So definitely some new names to watch out for, and certainly some of the regular names have been pushed back down the order again by these new additions to the grid.
Yeah, Mark Bennett, just to mention as well, before his time racing 420Rs, or I think the Superlight R300 Championship, it was known before the name changed to 420Rs previously. He started that racing, or I first came across him racing, in a really nice, it was like a metallic charcoal grey, or Honda S2000 of the Honda VTEC Challenge, and he was pretty quick in that. When he wasn't chasing Rob Birkinshaw's Honda Integra, he was pretty much the class of the field in many cases. But he managed to move to Caterham's, bit of a new challenge. It's good to see him back behind the wheel once again. We're looking at the number 88 here of Martin Buchan, who is someone who is no stranger to esports racing and currently sitting 8th at the moment. But what's intriguing here, Chris, is that he is a regular esports racer. But I say this only, I don't say this impolitely at all. He's only sat at the moment in 8th place in qualifying. That might change in a minute when he's about to finish his current lap at the moment. But it just shows that even if you're an experienced esports racer, some of these guys who are racing either racing these guys for real and also cars for real, and also in the caterhamracer.com series, it doesn't seem to be a series that you can just slot into. It's a case of where you have to kind of build up your speed and spend laps on the server getting quicker and quicker. And so the fact that Martin, as talented as he is only down in 8, just shows that there's some stiff competition, particularly from those who drive these cars weekend in, weekend out in real life. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, it's you gain by driving in real life, you do get that sense of place and sense of situation. Now, obviously, a lot of these drivers haven't actually been to Estoril, but still having driven these cars across so many events now that we're into our 3rd season. Yeah, it's not something it is easy just to slot into. I mean, Jensen Hassler has managed that, so it is possible. But equally, I think all the drivers on the service are pretty, they're unanimous in the fact that they are still seeing the standard rise, and just to get into this top 18 of the A grid is getting tougher and tougher every week. And we see people like Paul Ferniehoff this week not getting along necessarily with the track so well, and he's down in 14th currently, where we might expect to see him firmly mid-grid. We were certainly looking to think that he might be a new qualifier. He was pushing the doors last time out.
Certainly was, and there's a few drivers still pushing the doors and qualifying here as we get to only just under 2 minutes to go. So James Murphy then, who in many cases many would have expected to be out there, is fastest at the moment, 155.080. He is very close to that, dipping under that magical sub 155 barrier, as Chris just alluded to, being an incredibly quick time. Again, another impressive performance, only his second race meeting in the Winter Euro Series from Jensen Hassler. He might quote himself as a bit of an old boy, but he certainly has got plenty of experience, at least on the sim here, to be able to get himself up there. And he is only just over a 10th off pole position. Mark Bennett's made a very welcome comeback, and he's made a statement by putting himself in 3rd fastest. Christian Zaruta, who won the race in Zolder last time out, is 4th. And then we've got some other drivers in the background here who we think are going to be the ones mainly for battling for those qualifying spots behind arguably James Murphy, because we've got Mark Bennett's in there, but also the third one, Christian Zaruta's 5th. Chris Skillicorn's up there in 6th position. So is Blair McConaughey. He's only 700ths of a second away as well. Martin Buchan's there in 8th. Emma Jaselinks of Belgium is 9th, and James Fowler is in 10th. And we've got Steve Arnell, Tom McEwen, Guy Crawford, Paul Fernhoff, Martin Rodman, and Andy Parker. So I think in terms of looking at the drivers who've got the quality here, not to be too presumptuous, I would expect Murphy to be up there in the top 3 spot, as we've just mentioned. Mark Bennett probably will be the next one up there as well. There's going to be quite a fight, I think, all things considered, between the likes of Skithercorn, McConaughey, Buke, and maybe Jesselings, because some of these drivers, while not be the most quickest in qualifying, they have got good race pace and good racecraft, so they can push their way through and they can avoid some of the incidents and some of the cars, drifting wide, which drivers have to be careful with, of course, the fact that there is partial damage in this season now, so they're being a bit more careful and a little bit less robust with their moves. But these drivers, I'd imagine at the moment, from, let's say, 6th place down to 9th or 10th, you've got a really close batch of drivers here who I think are going to be in that mix for arguably the final automatic qualifying spot behind those who have already qualified and those who are racing for the first time and would expect to be in that top 3 as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because of the depth of this field now, I'm just highlighting Guy Crawford here. He's down in 13th at the moment, and we know how well he races and how far he can push up through the field in a race situation. And we've got a very tight turn 1. It's a fairly long straight from the start line down into turn 1. So all manner of things can happen. And yeah, there will be a bit of luck involved about who does get, if there is any incidents, if the things do get caught up. But yeah, literally, I could see anyone on this grid making that top qualifying spot. We've got a 25-minute race with damage. Anything can happen.
You say that again, it's the classic phrase, anything can happen in, most of Formula 1, but we say motorsport, and it usually does. So we're coming up to the end of qualifying as the checkered flag has come out on the session, and it is, surprise, surprise, Superman himself, James Murphy, who has shot to the top of the times on his first night in the Winter Euro Series, but back in the 420R, of course. And so the standings then, in terms of the qualifying results for this tonight's 3rd round of the Winter Euro Series, are as follows. James Murphy then will start on pole position, but Jensen Haslett, who made quite an impact at Zolder, is continuing his good form with a front row start alongside Superman himself. Then Steve McMaster and Mark Bennett on the 2nd row of the grid. Christian Zaruta, the Zolder winner, is back in 5th alongside Chris Skillercorn. Then it's Blair McConaughey and Emil Jesselings of Belgium. Martin Buchan, the Scot, in 9th. And James Fowler rounds out the top 10 starters. Back on row 6, it's Steve Arnell from Tom McEwing in 12th. Then it's Guy Crawford and Paul Fernerhuff, Mark Rodman and Andy Parker. And then Paul Hawker looks to be on the 9th row of the grid all by himself, because I think we were due Tom with this, but for reasons we don't know, looks as though, unfortunately, either he just didn't set a time or isn't here to take the start for tonight's race, unfortunately. Now, before we get racing tonight, I did want to mention, of course, one thing is that in terms of race, driving a 420R, of course, in the virtual world, you've been getting back to doing something that you do best in many cases, which is driving a Caterham in real life, because I spotted on social media last week, Chris, you were back out in your new toy, your new 420R that you've been keeping safe for the last year or so, and you had to do it in a rather damp Brands Hatch last week. Tell us about how you got on with that.
It was Donington, and it was extremely...
Oh, it was Donington, forgive me.
It was extremely soggy and extremely cold. It even snowed at one point, so just shows how there was very little grip, and I can't say that I had as good a first day as George Russell in his new seat, but nevertheless, it was great fun to be back out there, and it's good medicine to get turning some laps after so long. So yeah, building up for the start of the 2021 season in April.
Excellent. And just remind me, and whose car did that used to be? Because I'm sure it was somebody's older 420R. Who did it used to be? Originally
built for Paul Wilson. Unfortunately, he passed away not long after having it built, and it used to be Sean Burns after that, and now I am the third owner. So yep, Sean Byrne had been travelling around with it, so now it's my turn to take over and see how I can perform in it.
So you got a car with winning pedigree, because Sean Burns put some good results in that in the past when he was in it. So you've got a decent car.
No excuses is what you're saying.
What's that?
I have no excuses is what you're saying there.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't expect it's going to be in the usual Cheesemobile livery, is it? I guess any hints for that?
It's actually keeping green for the history of it being Paul Wilson's car. We're keeping it green, unless a big sponsor comes along. Then I can, then I'll be any colour they want me to be.
Cathedral City, if you're listening, sponsorship opportunities are available. So, but that's good. The reason I was getting confused before we get the start on the way is that they're also out testing the 2021 spec Caterham 7 UK race car, because that was out testing on the brand new Avon Slicks and Wets that are looking to run next year. And there were some great pictures taken by John Bright, of course, Snappy Races himself. It was out in the wet, and Caterham CEO Graham McDonald and I think David Ridley, they were both out doing some driving, and they're both saying that the car feels mega. I think one or two drivers even saying no matter how hard they pushed it in the wet tyres on the Avons, the Avon wet tyres just wouldn't have just kept on gripping. So that should be pretty mega if it starts to rain. And given that we're in the UK and it seems to have no connotation of exactly what the weather's going to do, you could be sunny one day, weather could tell you, and then it could be a complete Michael Fish situation. It'll be a hurricane next day. But either way, if it is going to be wet, I expect those cars to fly. They're going to fly tonight, though, because for the 25 minutes here at Estoril for round 3 of the Caterham Euro Winter Series, we're about to get underway. So James Murphy is looking to get himself an automatic qualifying spot. So is everyone else who hasn't made it through yet. But let's see who can take victory here in Portugal. We're away in racing. Bit of a stumbling start initially there, I think, from Steve McMaster from the second row of the grid. He did creep just a tiny bit before the lights went out, but I think he should have been okay. But they make the sprint now down towards turn 1 for the first time. It's with the outside line into the right-hander goes James Murphy. Hassler's got second place. It's 3 abreast behind, between looks like that was McMaster, Giruta and Skillicorn. Martin Burke is dropping a little bit back as well. I think he's side by side now with Skillicorn into the second corner. And now the short sprint towards it. Oh, and there's contact just behind. But Chris Skillicorn's been tagged, I think, by either Burke or Jaselic just behind them. But now there's a bit of position swapping going on, exiting these 2 switchback corners. Skillicorn now side by side with McMaster, who he was about 3rd or 4th, but he's been shuffled back in the first few turns and hasn't been able to maintain his position towards the front. So he's going to come now down onto the back straight for the first time. And just taking a look at where we are on circuit. They're coming up towards the Parabolica interior, which is these two long corners that they have here at Estoril. Bit of a braking duel here going on between Paul Fernhoff and Emil Jaselic, who hasn't been able to climb higher than 11th place. He's trying to go around the outside of Fernhoff here, and behind them it's side by side between Mark Rodman and Andy Parker over 12th position. So a little bit of drama in the midfield, Chris. The front runners appear to be touched with getting away scot-free, but plenty of battles you can see going on all sorts. And just I was about to cut it, Paul Fernhoff getting a bit shoved around a bit there in the mid-pack, and you can't say it's not fast and frantic with these guys, particularly the 420R. I think some of them didn't expect the speed difference. Was most of them having driven the academy car for the last couple of rounds. I think the 420Rs back in race spec might be a bit of a shock to the system for some of them. Yeah, definitely.
It does take a bit. It's a different dynamics of a car. Its braking's different. Carrying more speed into all the corners and round all the corners. So yes, it does make a difference, and things happen a lot quicker when you're travelling that extra bit of speed. It looked like Paul Fernhoff he got a good start, but it looked like he was a bit of a cork in a bottle, didn't it? And the champagne started spraying then. But yeah, out front we've got Murphy. Actually, Hassler is really quite close on his tail, so Murphy's not having its own way. But remember that Hassler's already qualified, so he doesn't need to do anything, and Murphy doesn't want to get caught out with him. But at the moment, these two are pulling slight gap over Giruta, who's just got past Mark Bennett. Again, Giruta's qualified, so Mark Bennett is also in a qualifying position right at this moment.
Yeah, so if things were to stay as they were, and it's wishful thinking because we've still got 22 and a half minutes to go, it would be James Murphy, Mark Bennett and Blair McConaughey who will get the 3 automatic qualifying spots. And hopefully that makes sense for those who are still a bit confused by my explanation of why a driver that might be 2nd or 3rd but doesn't qualify, because as we said, Jensen Hassler, Christian Giruta, and also, where's he gone? Steve McMaster, who's down in 15th. Whatever's happened to him has obviously been a disaster. Those 3 drivers have already qualified, so wherever they finish, it's still a valid position. It doesn't. They're effectively, in terms of promotion spots, they're kind of ignored. So Hassler and Giruta are effectively going to be the positions were allocated as if they weren't there. So basically, the 3 qualifying spots at the moment is Murphy, who leads in 1st, Bennett, who's in 4th, and Skillicorn, who's in 5th position. Now, what's interesting here is Jensen Hassler, he was on the back of James Murphy, and he almost tagged the rear of him into turn 1. He ran quite wide and got a little sideways, and because of that, he's lost momentum all the way through the rest of this lap, to the point where he's now lost the 2nd place he had on the road. Of course, these two, again, already qualified, so he's just battling for fun here for position. Mark Bennett really doesn't need to get involved, but then again, you try telling a racing driver not to get involved in the battle, and that's kind of like, sort of trying to tell a toddler not to go for chocolate. He's not really going to listen to you, is he? So as they go into the final couple of corners through the Parabolica Ayrton Senna onto the pit straight for the 2nd time, Murphy has the advantage and he's pulling away, and now Christian Giruta has managed to get himself into 2nd place. The question's going to be is how's Jensen going to respond to this after being on the tail of the leader to trying to battle and survive in the final podium spot in the race. It's slipping away a little bit, but it's still early days.
Yeah, definitely. You can see things sort of starting to pan themselves out. Christian Giruta, they're settling into 2nd place, but Murphy out front, and he's had the extra pace that everyone else is looking for. So, as long as he can make no mistakes, I think he is now starting to look a little bit more certain for that qualifying spot. But obviously, early doors with still 20 minutes left to go. That's probably far too early to call this. But you can see this nice pack of cars developing, all looking for that 2nd place. As I've said, some of them aren't looking for the qualifying place, but they're all going to go for the result nonetheless.
So, coming up to the first 5 minutes of the race done. This is a bit of a battle here, arguably for the final qualifying spot at the moment, between Blair McConaughey and Chris Skillicorn. Chris, of course, was runner-up in his academy group this year in 2020. And that was Mark Bennett, in fact, actually, I just spotted there. Mark Bennett's car was a little wayward on the exit of the... That was where Harmit was. That was Curva VIP by the looks of it. So Bennett's come under pressure and actually dropped back now into the clutch to both McConaughey and Skillicorn. And on the sprint towards the Parabolica interior, around the outside with Blair McConaughey. Very brave to sweep around the outside on the brakes. He managed to get himself in front. And that now puts him into 4th position. It doesn't change his qualifying spot because he's still now currently the second highest driver in the field. Well, it does. It's still in one of the qualifying spots, but it now means it's Mark Bennett that's more under pressure than Blair McConaughey if Mark can't get back into the rhythm.
Yeah, out front we're seeing Jensen is now back on the tail of Christian, so it looks like these guys are going to give James that nice easy ride out front because they're having a lot of fun between themselves. So yeah, this front group is having a lot, lots of battles, but equally the group behind have also got kind of a pack of racing going on as well. So it's the racing's going deep down the field at the moment.
Certainly is. Plenty of action going on. We're looking here at Mark Rodman. I think just behind him there, Paul Hawker was getting a bit sideways as he was coming up towards the S's towards the end of the lap there. And shame for Steve McMaster, we didn't catch it on camera, but he's dropped all the way down to 15th position. So what was a decent second row start, which could turn into a very slight creep on the line, it's a bit of a nightmare for him tonight here in Portugal. But he's going to try and fight on anyway. He's qualified anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. But I know in terms of ideally he'd like to be up there to battle as hard as he can. Now here's the onboard shot here from Mark Rodman, and if you try and find that video of the Estoril Racing Festival of John Barnes, what you'll find is you will find the same sort of camera shot, but just the way in which you just watched him carving his way through the pack, one after the other, and he's making his way through the field. Quite astonishing to watch, and I urge you all to take a look at it if you can find it. As Chris Skillicorn has to be very careful there. He's he's right at the back of Martin Buchan, who is another driver who could get an automatic qualifying spot here. Skillicorn's been shuffled back to 7th place because Buchan's managed to find a way through whilst we're looking at those battles outside the top 10. So, as I mentioned, those two drivers I expect to be up there. Pretty much sort of Murphy, and to a certain extent, Murphy's almost kind of touch wood a given, but everyone else was for those other two qualifying spots down. Which, as you can plainly see, Chris, it really is anyone's game between the likes of McConaughey, Bennett, Buchan, Skillicorn. They're all in that pack together, and all they're really going to do is hold each other up to keep on battling. It's going to be great to watch, but I imagine for some of the guys, a bit frustrating because they really just want to get into the mix, battle, and try and get themselves into a safe place without getting caught up too much.
Yeah, they do. So Murphy, Hasler, and McConaughey are currently in the qualifying spaces, with Bennett, Buchan, and not Hasler, McConaughey and Bennett are in the qualifying positions, and Buchan and Skillicorn close behind and looking to scamper down their heels. So yep, still got 17 minutes of this race still to go, so there's still plenty of opportunity for these places to swap, whether it be mistakes. We did see some in the academy races, drivers getting mentally fatigued and starting to make mistakes at the end. So you really do have to maintain concentration all the way through to the last few minutes of the race to really guarantee your place.
James Murphy reaffirming his pace at the moment, 155.286, getting near to his pole time of a 55.0. As he continues to lead now by almost 4 seconds. And now we see Christian Zeruto on the gaps managed to get away a little bit from Jensen Hassler. He's got his advantage now up to 1.3 seconds. If Jensen's not careful, he might start to fall into clutches of those drivers who are going for those other two promotion spots, as we take the sort of helicopter camera here to watch overhead from Mark Bennett. And you can see visibly just how quickly drivers close in under brakes, particularly as they head through this right-hander of Lamy, named after Portuguese racer Pedro Lamy, former F1 star, and he's raced at the Mans, he's raced sports cars, he's raced all sorts, and definitely someone who is a legend of Portuguese motorsport. Now to Curva VIP and up towards this very fast, flat-out right-handed kink that takes them towards the Parabolica interior, the first of these two longer corners, as we head down towards the left-hander. On board with Mark Bennett then, under the brakes, and that's a sequential Sadev gearbox, and turning his way through, and he's watching very carefully this battle between Jensen Hassler and Blair McConaughey. And McConaughey has caught up to the rear of Hassler's car. He's wedged underneath the roll cage of that machine down towards the right-hander hit at Aurelia, which is this right-hander that takes them back towards sort of two parts of the circuit here. You've got that sort of shorter, what's called a Tanque circuit, which is a slightly sort of shorter run here with a faster right-hander. But you've got the proper Grand Prix circuit where you've got this very tricky sort of back and forth winding uphill S-bend, which was on the Grand Prix circuit before. And then you head up through the S's, which is this sort of quick left-hander, and then all the way through the Parabolica Ayrton Senna, take them back onto the pit straight. So just over 15 minutes, just under just over 15 minutes to go, 15 and a half or so to be exact. And it's still James Murphy who now leads now by 4.5 seconds. So the gap is up by another 6/10 or so on this lap alone. Zeruta in second place, Hassler third, then McConaughey, Bennett, Buchan, Skillicorn, Parker and Fowler in the top, Fowler and Fernahub in the top 10. And it's Murphy, McConaughey and Bennett who'll get the automatic promotion spots if it stays like this towards the checkered flag.
Oh, this is going side by side with Bennett there defending the inside and actually did manage to hold on against Martin Buchan. So up halfway through that corner, it was looking like Buchan might have it, and he's still on the outside, still causing a nuisance. But Bennett there showing a bit of experience defending that inside line, although he might have left this inside open now. So Buchan is going to creep up the inside, looking for the switchback, but I think he's done enough to cover it off, and he's got the inside now for the next corner. So great move there, but that means that Bennett is dropping down the order from where he started in third place on the grid. So he is now back down to fifth, sixth, heading in the wrong direction at the moment.
So he's hoping to try and reclaim a bit more pace there, because the next person that might put him under threat is going to be Chris Skillicorn. So this now means, of course, that Martin Buchan, as we said, has got that final promotion spot at the moment, but we still haven't hit halfway yet. So there's plenty to go as Buchan locks the inside front into the interior power bowl. He gets a little bit twitchy on trying to get the power down with oversteer on the back end of that Caterham. Now as they head down towards the Aurelia corner, Bennett's going to try and fight back here, and he locks up and goes deep, taking what would have been the karting line in the wet, but there is no wet weather by default in the Saturn Corsa. And he's now going to try and get him back here as they come towards the switchback of the Gancho S's. So uphill, it's a really, really tricky section here, but for those F1 fans, it was a scene of Michael Schumacher was set up Damon Hill for a couple of laps into that section and made a very daring pass for the lead back in 1995, and it's a bit of a tempting pass as well in many cases. And I know you've driven this car in the sim in many cases, in the sim or the circuit in sim with this car, or at least the academy car in many cases, Chris. So it is one of the overtaking opportunities that is available, but it's not usually a favoured opportunity spot because of the fact that it is such a tight and twisty part of the circuit. And anyone who is going to make a pass, you have to be one, pretty close, but also two, fairly committed to take your line, and also three, trusting of the guy in front of you not to try to turn and hit you.
Definitely, Caterham's make a overtaking opportunity at any corner on any track around in the world. I think that one's certainly one of the ones that we would say it makes a messy overtake. It's never very clean. It's so tight and open, the track there, that really if you're gonna do a block pass, and that relies, like you say, on somebody keeping an eye out and making sure they don't turn in on you. Equally, in these cars in particular, it's extremely difficult to get the power down when the speeds are that low and the torque's so high. It's really difficult to get that power down, and you are seeing drivers losing the rear end and squirming on the exit of corners, and that's because they're having to feather that throttle. It's not just a matter of pressing it straight down, and in that chicane section in particular, you do have to wait a long time before you can get to full power.
Full power is what Mark Bennett's looking for if he can try and get past Martin Buchan again for that final promotion spot, and I have a feeling it might go back and forth for a few laps if he's going to try and make that move. We've still got just over 12 minutes to go now, and Murphy, just to check in with him, is now 5.5 seconds up the road. Since we last saw him, he's pulled out another second on that lead that he's got now. Christian Zeruta is in second place, but Hassler has caught him back up again, so the gap was about roughly 1.3, and this is the scrap we're looking at here now. But then McConaughey is catching the pair of them, so whether it's simply just Zeruta who's enjoying himself because he doesn't need to win this race, he's just trying to conserve second place. Hassler doesn't need to make any more moves either. He can stay where he is, and he's already safe in the knowledge that he's qualified for the grand final at the Nürburgring. But Blair McConaughey, I'm sure, he's also at the moment, again, that's the key phrase, at the moment in a qualifying spot. We'd deem that to be a bit higher up the field. Speaking of getting higher up the field, Stephen Masters managed to pick his way up a couple of spots since we last checked in on him. He was 15th after some mishaps in the first couple of laps. He's now back up to 13th and setting a decent pace. But trying to get past Mark Rodman here with Tom McEwing not too far ahead. But just even though the fact that he's already qualified, Chris, tonight hasn't really worked out for Steve this time, has it?
No, as we see him going off the track there, just to illustrate that moment, he really likes the 420R machinery, so he'll be disappointed with that. You said that you saw a creep from him off the line, and I'm pretty sure that I saw that too, and I'm therefore certain that the game would have seen it. In fact, a couple of them looked like they might have made that jump start. So the chances are that he's actually had to be through the pits already, and that's why he went down to 15th initially, and now is clawing his way back up through the field as he's recovered some of that gap back. But he doesn't look like he's going to be featuring at the front of our field today, so I'm sure he'll be back looking at the next event to see whether he can do a little bit better.
That's a good point. If the game did pick up that he was creeping enough, then he would have slapped him with a drive-through penalty for that one. We've seen it happen a few times with drivers in the previous series as well, getting a little bit too keen and just letting off the clutch of the handbrake just a bit too quickly, and because they're that eager to watch the lights, and it's almost like a trigger finger in terms of sort of waiting for it, and all of a sudden you look for a twitch and then away it goes, and unfortunately the quarter match is a little bit too quickly there. Now what's intriguing here is that Blair McConaughey just in front has got past Jensen Hassler since we were looking at since we last looked at them, so he's now up to third overall. He's still in the second qualifying spot, but it's put Hassler down to fourth position now, off the race podium. They've got to be careful now, because look who's charging up behind them. It's Martin Buchan and Mark Bennett and Chris Skillicorn. They're all over there. So I wonder here if Jensen Hassler has possibly just... I don't think he's got damage. Maybe he's sort of just lost his rhythm here and possibly lost a bit of pace, because we know he's quick and he was up there with James Murphy, but just steadily throughout this race, whether it's just getting frustrated or making mistakes or just pushing a bit too hard and overheating the tyres, whatever it is, but from a front row start and possibly challenging for the lead, it looks that Jensen's kind of marching a bit backwards towards the back of the top 10, isn't he?
We saw this exactly the same thing in the Academy car at Zolder as well, didn't we? He got to the end of the race and then started throwing it off. In fact, he got to the last 5 minutes, so it's kind of a bit worse this time. It's still 9 minutes to go, but nevertheless, he looks like he's on the outside. He might well get round the outside here to take that place back, although Blair is still hanging in there, and he will have the inside for the next corner.
He's looking for it, and looks though it's going to have to be the outside line for Hassler for this run, but he's staying. He's got enough grip around the outside to stay there, and also watch for the black car behind. There's the darker car behind. That is Martin Buchan. As McConaughey goes deep into Lamy, and unless he can get back to the inside for the next corner, which is going to be Curva VIP, it's going to be positioned once again for Jensen. Again, he doesn't have to do this, but I guess if he can put a car between himself and the rest of the cars behind that can try and take qualifying spots away from him, that'd be incredibly beneficial. They're side by side again, up towards the kink here in the middle of the circuit, towards the Parabolica interior, and still they're running wheel to wheel on the run towards the first of these two hairpins, down into the braking zone. A little bit later on the brakes there for Hassler. He'll take the outside line because he's confident enough to do so. McConaughey slides a little bit, so does Hassler, but he still has grip on the outside, surprisingly. He's still staying side by side. And now here comes Martin Buchan in the two-tone green car behind. He's swarming all over the rear of the pair of them, up towards Aurelia corner. And in there too, you can see, is also Bennett, and also what you can see is Chris Skillicorn. McConaughey gets elbowed out wide, and it's going to be three abreast on the run towards the right-hander, towards the Ganjo chicane. Still, Hassler and McConaughey are side by side. They can't leave each other alone. There's a bump in the rear from Hassler. It's a chain reaction. They're all bumping one after the other. And incredibly, somehow, Chris, McConaughey's still in front, but I'm not quite sure what just happened there. There was everything happened and nothing happened at the end of it.
Absolutely. I have no idea how McConaughey stayed out front after the collision there or the contact. And like you say, it was an angry swarm of cars. And regularly we see that end in catastrophe. But actually, they all sorted themselves out pretty well. And we're still seeing the continuation of this battle with Buchan there holding up with Mark Bennett making a recovery back through the field. Look, and Chris Skillicorn aiming for that place. He's gone right down to the pit wall. He got squeezed absolutely down, but he was determined to get that inside line. He does have the inside line, but it's 3 wide. He's broken very late, and it's just, will he make a stop? He hasn't. He outbroke himself. It did look like that might happen, so he's now got it all to do again.
Yeah, Skillicorn went out wide, and I thought Jensen Hassler was also going to outbreak himself, but in truth, he actually had to slot him back behind Blair McConaughey, because I think he was lining him up down the pit straight to try and make a move, and it didn't quite come off. So Skillicorn's the one that's dropped away as a result of the mistake. There's Christian Zaruta, who's just probably laughing at his mirrors at the moment, watching what's going on behind him, as these guys here continue to scrap. And Zaruta, again, he's got comfort that he is he's already qualified for the grand final, so he can just simply go out there and enjoy himself and take the second place, as lonely as it might be, because his fellow DPR driver, James Murphy, is already still up the road, still by almost 7.5 seconds. So he's pretty safe for the time being. And of course, again, anything can happen, so it's never certain until he crosses the line and takes the checkered flag. And it certainly won't be the case for these guys here as they come up through Parabolica interior with just under 6.5 minutes to go. So McConaughey there sits in third. He's in the second qualifying spot. Hassler's already qualified, so now it's pretty much a battle royale to see who's going to be the best of the rest of the qualifiers, because at the moment McConaughey has it, but you can see there that both, at the moment at least, Bennett and Buchan want it. Skillicorn will try and catch up if he can, and all this battling might be to the benefit of Skillicorn if they continue to scrap amongst each other like this. So watch for it to go back and forth as they come back towards the S's here, and they turn in through the left-hander and this very long right-hander back onto the pit straight, and they're all kind of within half a second of each other. So I imagine, Chris, it's that magic margin we keep talking about, half a second. This is going to be quite a drag race down towards turn 1, I reckon, with them being this close.
Yeah, it's a bit like, you know, in Formula 1 we see the DRS open, don't we, all the way down the field, and it you know, leads to an extremely high speed going into the thing. We see Hassler here coming back at McConaughey, jinking him, actually giving a bit of a cheeky dummy there to keep the inside line. And can he get it stopped up for this turn 1? And it does look like he has got that done. It was, you know, he was acting as a little rear defence for Blair in this battle for the final qualifying spot, but it looks like that has now disappeared. So Blair is going to have to look in his mirrors again to protect himself from Bennett, who's looking hungry, probably looking the most hungry at the moment. He's just locked his little front tyre up there, just coming into this. I say hairpin, they're all hairpins. He loses traction again, so he's got to do it all again. All that hard work to move up through the field, and he just, after one slight slip on the accelerator, and he's got to do it again. He's done it again.
I think maybe Bennett's getting a little bit frustrated by the fact that he was caught in the pack there, and he's just lost his rhythm, because now he's allowing Chris Skithercorn a chance to get back into the fight here at the moment now, because of the complexion and how it's the race and how it's changed between these qualifying spots. It's now these two that will have the automatic promotion. They've been Blair McConaughey and this man Martin Buchan, because you see that Jensen Hassler's got up to 3rd place now. He is already qualified, which means that in many cases he is not really, I don't want to be implied, but he's not really relevant now in terms of where he is, because it now means if he can race off up the road and kind of get into a bit of no man's land and gap the cars behind him, he can leave them to fight amongst themselves for those other 2 automatic qualifying spots as we go with 4 minutes to go. And they've kind of paired off a little bit here. We've got McConaughey versus Buchan, then a few car lengths back, and then we've got Bennett versus Skithercorn. So whilst there was a big group of 4 or 5, very steadily over the last every sort of couple of laps or so, Chris, one car seems to drop off the queue of the leading group, and then slips back to form another group behind, but several seconds away. Yeah,
that's right. We often see them. I call it wheelbarrow racing. It's 2x2 with the two sort of, two pulling away because of the slipstream effect. And if someone's made a mistake and they drop off that slipstream, they drop back. But then as soon as the battle starts again, so we're starting to see cars going side by side, as we've got McConaughey here and side by side with, or looking like he's side by side with Buchan. That's going to hold them up, and then we'll see Bennett and Skillicorn coming right back at them again. So, it's one of those things. If you've got to make the calculation, can I afford to have this battle, or am I better off sitting here for the time being?
Yeah, McConaughey might want to try and sit on the tail of Jensen Hassler if he can keep up with him, but sitting on his tail is Martin Buchan, because he wants that to be the best of the rest behind. He looks to be pretty comfortable qualifying at this stage still. James Murphy, he's now ahead by 8 seconds in the lead. Just to quickly check in with him as we continue to watch this scrap for currently 4th, 5th and 6th. Again, as it stays right now, James Murphy, Blair McConaughey and Martin Buchan, they were with the 3 drivers which will get automatic qualification to the grand final just before New Year in a couple of weeks' time at the Nürburgring. We've still got one more qualifying race, and then the last chance saloon for those who haven't qualified. As they come out of parabolic interior, Martin Buchan is just starting to make Blair feel the pressure here as they come towards the radio right-hander, then the short shoot towards the Gancho S-bend, very tight and twisty uphill S-bend chicane. And let's see if McConaughey will defend the inside line, if he'll take the traditional racing line into it. He does turn in as expected. Again, looking for that switchback, goes one way then the other, and Buchan tries to sneak up the inside to get better traction on the exit, but towards the S's, McConaughey's kept the momentum. So there's going to be about, I think, roughly 2 laps to go, because James Murphy, I believe, has already crossed the line to start these penultimate lap. So pretty much then, if not, maybe this could be the last lap, in fact, either way, possibly the last lap. And he's on his way to secure that place. I was about to say, meanwhile, because we hadn't really talked about him too much, apart from just checking where he was in terms of his gap. But this is the main battle we're looking at here. It's now the battle to be best of the rest between Buchan and McConaughey. And Buchan might be in the driving seat here. He's on the outside line, but he's got the better momentum into the corner. He breaks that a little bit later into curve 1, turns into the right-hander, and he's in front. So he's now into that second qualifying spot. McConaughey will still go up at this position, but in terms of pride, Chris, that that might have smarted a bit. That might have hurt a bit, losing out to Martin.
Yeah, definitely, and also just cuts his margin for error down, doesn't it? So it's always a bit dodgy racing and fighting, because you always threaten with contact, but nevertheless now he is in that final spot, and with Mark with Bennett behind, looking at the moment like there's not enough time and there's too much gap. As Mark Bennett loses the rear end, he's going to make contact with the barrier, and I guess he had to keep the pressure on and try, and I think that is just a case of just trying to get the power down. Last chance trying to get that spot away from Blair.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I'm sure he'll have to come back and try and qualify the next time when we go to the next circuit on the calendar, which is Zandvoort. So he'll have to try come back again and see if he can qualify. Unless, of course, anything happens in the next few seconds, which is usually a bit of a commentator's curse, but we'll wait and see how it plays out. We've got 20 seconds to go, and I don't know if James Murphy's going to get across the line before we get to the checkered flag. It's in 15 seconds to go, but we'll switch to James anyway, and we'll see if he gets to the line before the checkered flag goes out. He may or may not, but either way, it's been a pretty incredible race for him, and once he got out in front, after a brief challenge in front, he isn't going to get time to do another lap, so he's now going to, as we expect, weave in the light towards the flag, and pretty much business as usual for James Murphy. He comes across the line, takes the checkered flag, and not only wins here at Estoril, but bags the first automatic qualifying spot for the grand final for the Winter Euro Series in a brilliant drive. Christian Zeruta, second place for him. Third goes to Jensen Hassler, and then the other two automatic qualifiers will be Martin Buchan and Blair McConaughey, with Chris Skitherpoint agonisingly just missing out in sixth position there, just behind Buchan and McConaughey as well. Bennett will still struggle home to seventh place in the end. Eighth will go to Paul Fernerhuff. And then we've got the rest of the top 10 making its way across the line. So there goes Bennett, there goes Fernerhuff. Across the line goes McEwing. Emma Jaselink managed to get up to 10th. And Steve McMaster recovers after we think a drive-through penalty earlier on after his very light jump start. He comes back home in 11th. It's then for James Fowler 12th, Mark Robin 13th. And then we have Andy Parker across the line from Steve Arnell, Paul Hawker, and just ahead of Guy Crawford. A bit of an anonymous race with Guy Crawford, not the pace we normally see him in the past. Maybe he's more suited to the academy car, but back in 15th place, and not the race maybe that he was hoping for, but he can come back next time to try and improve. So there is the results of our third qualifying race in the caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series. And James Murphy pretty much does what he does best, both in real life and in the sim. Gets out in front, stays there, dominates, and wins at a canter. He wins by 9.2 seconds in the end from Christian Zeruta in second place. Jensen Hassler rounds up the top three on the overall podium. And then it's the two Scots who will take the other two qualifying positions, because alongside with James Murphy, it's Martin Buchan, who finished fourth, and Blair McConaughey in fifth. They've booked their places to the Nürburgring in fine style. Chris Skithercorn just missed out, but he'll be back next time, I'm sure, to put that right. So I think there's that. Someone's Caterham moonwalking down the pit straight. I think that's what the background. Didn't realise Caterham was like Michael Jackson that much. It's Mark Bennett 7th, Paul Fernerhuff 8th, Tom McEwing 9th, and Emma Jaselink rounds out the top 10. 11th place goes to Steve McMaster after he had his small jump start at the beginning, we believe. And it was 12th place for James Fowler, 13th for Mark Rodman, and Andrew Parker, Steve Arnell, Paul Hawker, and Guy Crawford. And sadly, no start for Tom Willis. I think really, Chris, as we predicted towards the beginning of that race, I think the winner was no surprise. Second and third in terms of qualifying spots, again, not so much, but didn't mean there wasn't some epic battles trying to decide who it was going to be that was going to go up with James. But I think, as we said, for James, pretty much does what he does best, business as usual, job done for him.
Yeah, I mean, I felt a bit sorry for him in that we didn't get to see anything of him, did we? We saw him briefly at the start and then very, very briefly at the end. And in between, he clearly had a great string of race laps, because, 8 seconds by the end of a 24-minute period, 25-minute period is pretty impressive. I'd give him that much. With Christian, it's sort of, again, early doors having those big battles which dropped him away from Murphy, but I'm not sure he even had the pace to keep up with Murphy tonight anyway. Jensen Hassler, again, another impressive performance on the server, really having to fight all the way through the race there. Martin Buchan getting the better of Blair at the end there, but Blair still holding on after Mark Bennett and Chris Skithercorn's attack faded.
So what we're saying is, James Murphy, you're just too quick, because we need to be a bit slower, then we get more time on screen, I think, is probably what we're saying.
Basically, if you make it more interesting for us, then we'll show you a bit more.
He needs a purposely bad qualifying so he can do
recovery drive.
To do a drive through
John Barnes.
What have I forgotten his name?
John Barnes.
John Barnes, that's it. For me, I couldn't pick it out. Thank you for that. Do a John Barnes and come from the back of the grid to the front in about 8 or 9 laps or so. I'm sure he'll be up for that. Then he can really lives up to his nickname, Superman. Chris is now about to become the virtual version of Martin Brundle, because he's now going to go and trundle down the virtual pit lane and see if we can have a chat to a couple of our drivers. So once again, it's that time for me to give him the signal. So Chris, off you go. Let's see what we can find.
Well, we're definitely going to start with the Murphy after what was, I guess a boring race in a way. James, come back on our server and dominate in a fashion that we haven't seen yet.
That was really fun. I've missed you guys. That was really fun.
We missed you tonight because we only watched you very at the beginning and one lap at the end. So you really haven't featured on our stream.
Well, if that's the result, I don't really mind. And as I was speaking to the guys, I think there's a brilliant race by the sounds of it for particularly 3rd, 4th, 5th by the looks of it. So I'm looking forward to watching that back.
Yeah, it was very close all the way through that field. But yep, you have bagged your qualification spot, so you can rest assured that if you are available, then you have your spot there. But it's great to see you back on the server, James. Are you going to be joining us for some of the rest of the season at least?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'd like to join for as many of them as possible, including the last race if I can, the championship race. I should thank one of your sponsors, as you guys know very well, Darren Burke, performance driver coach, as he is probably called for the stream, is coaches me in real life for DPR and on the sim as well. And obviously ahead of next year, I've been doing plenty of work on the sim for the 420. So it'd be remiss of me, especially as I just beat his time, to not to mention him and thank him for all of his coaching over the years, really, as it is now.
Okay, great job, James. Thank you. I don't know if I am looking forward to seeing you next season on track itself.
I was going to say, because James, you are technically talking to one of your rivals for the championship next year, so it'd be quite intriguing to see how you two get on track.
I'm just thrilled to be. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I'm just thrilled to be out there with. We've never raced each other. I don't think we've been on the same track on the same week. We might have been on the same track on the same weekend in my academy year, but I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm there's a rumor that my car is due to be born, and I'm due to take it out for the first time on Saturday. But we'll see. It's all a bit of a secret right now.
all I'll say now is you might be friendly now, but he might not be so friendly on track. So I just be prepared for that one, James.
I look forward to hearing your commentary back as and when it happens, Scott.
Yeah, me too. I'm looking forward to how the season plays out. I haven't got the dates for commentary yet, but I imagine I'll be at majority of Caterham stuff. So yeah, looking forward to it, and hopefully you give us some more performances to live up to your nickname. So good job, Superman. Well done.
Thank you, gents, and thanks again for it's a WID series is shaping up great, and appreciate you putting it on. And thanks for all your assistance as well, guys. Appreciate it.
Cheers, James. Okay, so James' first qualifier. So the next qualifier we had was Blair McConaughey. So let's drag him in there. Blair, have you got us in the commentary box?
Yeah.
What a cracking race! You weren't able to relax any time during that race, were you?
Not at all. It was from different parties at different times. I had a really good race with Jensen, and it seemed that we were quicker at different points in the circuit, so we would match up at different points. And we had a few sketchy moments, I think, going into the first corner, but managed to get through unscathed side by side. So it was, pretty tense.
I think about halfway, three-quarters of the way through that race, there was a pack of 7 cars all fighting for that position. So not an easy thing to manage. So you must be pretty pleased that you popped out the other side okay.
Yeah, there was points where looking in the rearview mirror, it was quite dicey, and even there were for the people that played Assetto Corsa with the radar up, they were just swarming behind. So it was quite scary to see.
Anyway, you've got that qualification spot in the bag now, so you can relax for the rest of the season up until that grand final if you're able to make it.
Absolutely, yes. Thanks.
All right, and we will see you there.
Guys, cheers.
Okay, so that was our 2 qualifiers. Was it Martin Buchan was the other qualifier? I think I'm right.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So let's see whether Martin's around for a chat. I haven't tried dragging Martin into the commentary box. I'm not sure if you've got audio, Martin, or if you're just a listener.
Hello, I'm here, guys.
Hey, welcome to the commentary box, and congratulations! What a race! It looked fully intense for a vast majority of that for you. You were backwards and forwards all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't know where that pace came from. I mean, I was looking at my lap times going, I've done these in practice anywhere near that. I was like 55.8. I was like, where's that coming from? But and then so raceable. I mean, you get half a second, you got the draft, and you're just past the next guy. It's mad.
Yeah, so I guess the draft helps push those times on, but equally, just being egged on, seeing the cars around you, it's the right time to pull out those lap times. So congratulations on that. You get your qualification spot through to the grand final. If you can make it at the end of the year, it'll be good to see you there.
Hopefully, yeah. I'll have to check the dates and all that, and hopefully I'll be there with you guys. Yeah.
Great result on it's not an easy grid to be a part of. So congratulations on making it to the top of the field.
And thanks. It's brilliant.
Great stuff. There you go, Scott.
Brilliant, good stuff. Good to hear from our top three, and it's good to see. I was pleasantly surprised here, Martin. Thinking, I was actually saying, I wasn't sure where that pace came from. So good to see that the sim race had been quite humble, and that he wasn't quite sure how he was able to get that quick. And just everyone wondering, no, caterhamracer.com doesn't employ children to be pit board holders. That's just the compression of the pit lane person. I've seen that before SAT, of course, and that's quite funny. So it's good to see. But even so, another great race once again from caterhamracer.com, and 3 very deserving automatic qualifiers, Chris. And as we said, James Murphy just did James Murphy things. Just did what he does. Gets in the car, jumps in, dominates, takes the flag, and then goes home. This sounds like John Byrne in some cases, doesn't it?
Yeah, just looked a bit easy, didn't it? I'm sure when all the qualifiers all get back together again for those grand finals or the later races in the season, again, I don't think he'll have it quite all that easy. We saw so far we've had a couple of dominating victories. So as soon as you put those drivers back in with David Rowe and Christian and him all on that same grid together, and maybe Cherney making an appearance later in the season, we're not going to be in for an easy time.
I wonder if Cherney either might turn up for the next race at Zandvoort, or maybe even if he turns up at something like the last chance saloon at Barcelona and just comes in and just steals a qualifying spot out of nowhere. He hasn't raced for most of the season. That'd be quite funny and quite alarming for everyone else. But then again, I say alarming. We know how quick Jaroslav is. He's the person who's developed and worked on the physics of this car and the Academy car, since they were first put together. So it's no surprise that he's quick. But so I think it might be a bit like a hey, really moment from those guys who've been racing all season and didn't get a qualifying spot. But at the same time, you've got to be quick enough and you've got to be in it to win it. So if these guys aren't able to capitalise on that, then that's going to be the key thing. So I wonder if Jaroslav, I can see him actually, he's typing in the he's typing with Discord. Is it just the name at the bottom of it, just underneath the window I've got watching the stream, his name popped up. So whether he's listening or not, I don't know. But be intriguing to see who turns up for the last couple of rounds to see if they can pick up a qualifying spot, and also those who've been racing the past few weeks and haven't done just yet, whether it would just be positions up for grabs for leftovers, or other drivers who haven't come in yet because they haven't had time and want to try and jump in there to get their spot so they can possibly steal it at the death at the grand final.
Yeah, either way, it's a legitimate way into that grand final. That's how it's structured, and you can have as many chances as you want through that season. But Last Chance Saloon should be a good opportunity for those, and we'll get to see some of the battles happening a bit further down the people that we tend to see sort of the midfield will come to the fore because it will be their time to shine.
And just to clarify for the Last Chance Relay race, is that solely for drivers that haven't qualified for the grand final, or can anyone drive in that race?
No, that is going to be purely for drivers who have not qualified. So anyone who has qualified won't be able to enter that race. So it will be absolutely however many places are left over, they will be up for grabs for whoever finishes in those top spots.
I would have been intriguing to see about like an exhibition race alongside it, just to kind of, for anyone else that wants to race, bit of an exhibition race for those who have already qualified and want an extra race afterwards to maybe sort of gear themselves up a bit for the race they've just had. But who knows? Maybe we can look at that maybe going forwards if that's a feasible option. But sure. I'm sure there might be some drivers who, while they can't technically race in that sense in Barcelona, they might get another chance to do so in a separate race. But I guess it all depends on time scale that people can manage it, I suppose. Yeah,
exactly that, and we'll see what we've got available as far as drivers and how many are looking to do that. So absolutely. But good racing tonight. More of the same, hopefully from the next race out. So we're heading over to Zandvoort, a real driver favourite, and with the new banking and stuff to try and experience. And we had some really good academy races as we see Christian diving through the pit lane. I think we're looking for more close racing at Zandvoort, and it certainly produced some really close finishes the last time we went.
I did think we get it. The last time we raced there was back in the first season, of course, when we were going by I think what would have been the original 2020 calendar, which would have featured the usual European trip to Zandvoort. Obviously, for particular travel races for 2021, that European trip isn't on the calendar this year, but finger crossed for 20. No, sorry, forgive me. It is for the 7 UK cars. Forgive me, I was being being silly. It is for the UK cars twice because the 7 UK cars, of course, including yourself, of course, will get to do that.
Yep.
Zandvoort, and of course then Spa-Francorchamps to finish the season. Imagine that season finale at Spa-Francorchamps. You can't get much better than that, I suppose, can you?
No, that's everyone's looking forward to it. It's going to be a great season, and hopefully people can come and watch after they've watched their online racing. They can come and watch us in real life putting on our show.
Yeah, and hopefully the world will be a much more normal place than it has been these past past few months anyway. So that wraps up another fantastic broadcast, a fantastic evening of racing for caterhamracer.com. As always, thank you for those who've watched, either just watched back on the broadcast afterwards on the recorded version or watched live. Thank you for the support as always. And again, as we sign off, once again, we give thanks to our brilliant sponsors and partners who are supporting caterhamracer.com and the series that we run to make it happen. So once again, a very big thank you to those who support caterhamracer.com, because the Winter Euro Series is sponsored by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage. It's by FPZERO Simulators, providing professional grade simulators for your home and our drivers, and by Just Add Lightness, high performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7. And also additional support and additional thanks must go to Design Space Structures and to Darren Burke, performance driver coach. That's all from us here at Estoril. Thanks for watching. Catch us next week when we head from Portugal to the Netherlands and the fourth and final qualifying heat at Circuit Park Zandvoort. It should be a thriller. Join us next week. Bye for now.
Bye.